Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind Movement Health podcast. This month in May, we've been chatting about Pilates. I've been interviewing some amazing Pilates instructor around the globe. And this week, I have the amazing Ben Rashleigh on the show. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Pleasure to be here, Kate. I do find it interesting that you say around the globe, and you've had some great guests on so far, and then your this guest literally lives probably a kilometer away from you.
Well, you're an amazing instructor, and I thought, why not just sort of put into the spotlight one of our very own Australians, and you just happen to live close nearby. So it's amazing for me anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So before we dive in and sort of geek out about Pilates, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Ben Rashleigh. I am a owner at Aligned for Life Pilates in Melbourne CBD. Also an educator for National Pilates Training. I also work as a Pilates practitioner in the performance team for Melbourne City FC. I am also a presenter and educator sort of through nationally in Australia for the Pilates industry as well. I'm a father of two young kids, 4 and 2 years old, so in the thick of it there, and a partner to my lovely partner Annetta as well. So I've got a few hats.
Yeah, life is busy, huh?
As Annetta says, we're all busy, Karen.
Now, for even for me, because I don't know your history and
Mm,
how you got into Pilates, because I think this is, when I speak to Pilates instructors, or anyone sort of in the health industry, we generally have some type of personal story that's kind of led us here. Can you
mm.
share yours with us?
Sure, sure. I was the quintessential pessimist. Uh, if you could say anything of the sorts. I was a chef. I was a chef for the better part of a decade. Worked in fine dining restaurants. And when I say fine dining, sort of two hat restaurants here in Melbourne. So sitting in probably some of the top 10 restaurants in Melbourne, and also Michelin star kitchens over in Europe as well. And I was in the thick of it there. I used to work anywhere between 50 to 70-hour weeks, depending on what kitchen I was working in. And I literally devoted my life to my craft. And I did very well out of it. I was sort of, in my sort of mid to late 20s and doing very well and working my way up the brigade, so to speak, in through kitchens. And I used to go to work with a back brace. That's how I lived. I couldn't bend over to touch my knees without pain. I I was literally a wreck. And I just ignored it. I just ignored it and just kept going. And because, I remember my first couple of months as a chef, as an apprentice, and my head chef at the time turned around to me and goes, Ben, chefs don't get sick. And that was the end of that conversation. So, yeah, you just sort of push through. I got into Pilates because of that, because my physiotherapist suggested it. Okay. And I, being the arrogant sort of chef that I was, I internally had a bit of a giggle at it. I thought it was the ladies that I used to see in Ackland Street at the cafes there with their yoga mats having lattes at 10 o'clock in the morning on my day off. I thought you just lay on the ground and breathe. I'm like, what the hell is this thing going to do for me? As such. Anyway, I did go to a mat class and it was I was very quickly humbled in that class. And it ironically, I reckon it was probably my second or third class. I remember I was living in Marine Parade in St Kilda. And I remember walking home from that class and feeling like I was walking on the moon. It was like I had this bounce in my step, I had this stride, and that was the beginning of it all. And it was the beginning of going, well, shame on me for just jumping to a conclusion for starters. And yeah, very shortly after, I decided to get out of the industry of cooking and needed to find something else. And I decided to do my diploma at National Pilates Training very quickly after that.
Mm. Well, I still think that kind of belief or stigma around Pilates, especially, what men think of Pilates, is definitely, still out there. I have lots of my clients that come in and think, oh, my husband always says he just thinks I come here and lie down and breathe and zen out and then come home and complain about how hard it was until they come in the studio and realize that's not really the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I constantly get clients, not so much anymore because I've some of my clients I've had since day one. Um, I yeah, I still get clients though asking me to have a chat to their husbands and just to try and convince them of something else. Or I really wish my husband would just come and see you. That you would completely change his thoughts. And we've been able to do that with a few of them and stuff. But yeah, there is a stigmatism to it. Yeah, there very much is. And I think mindful movement in itself is very feminine in its traits. Not saying it's for females, but it has feminine traits. So it's very sort of internalized. And you really have to sort of break down and become one with your emotions and your own self, which is a very feminine quality. So yeah, it can be a bit off-putting for blokes.
And as a male instructor, you are probably, in the minority. The majority of instructors, especially that I know within Australia, are female. Do you ever sort of feel like, you are in the minority in that? And have you felt sort of any difference having, the male perspective compared to the female perspective when you're teaching?
Look, I definitely. Oh, where do you start with this one? Let's go back to when I was when I was actually training. So I remember back when I was training for my diploma years ago that we were talking about hands-on cues, right? And we were talking about pressure, open palms, and things like that, which are all very valid points in cueing. Um, and the female pressure is usually quite light because they don't want to be able to push your body into a certain position. Yeah. However, being a male, if you come in quite light on a thigh or a hip, it it's actually quite disconcerting. You know what I mean? So very quickly back then, and I remember because I remember sort of we worked on one thing in our contact days, and it's very valid, and like still to this day, it's very valid. But then I remember going into sort of a student clinic and having the educator there go, your hands on are a bit light. It looks, it can be seen as a bit concerning. And I've always been self-conscious of that since. Um, which is very true. Like, as in, like, there was nothing in the hands-on that was problematic, but it's just like, for some females, they want that. For some females, they don't. For some clients, they do. For some clients, they don't. And being a male figure, putting your hands on a woman, you sort of have to go in going, well, I've got to be firmer than what normal people would be anyway. You've sort of got to stamp it with this sort of um, this masculinity of, you're here to help them and get the message across quickly if you are going to use hands-on to someone who trusts you and gives you that permission. So very quickly on in my career did I sort of develop this consciousness of that. And what back then was probably felt like a very steep learning sort of situation. Um, you know, to when I say a steep learning situation, to a learning situation that was, very positive. Do you know what I mean? There was no negativity to it, and it was actually just I'm really glad we had that conversation so early on in my learnings that it shaped me to actually go, well, I'm going to teach like a man. I am going to use my masculinity to my skill set. I am going to use um, how I perceive life and movement and the world to that skill set. And you know what? My teaching is not for everyone, you know, but my teaching is definitely there for someone who does want the firm handset or does want the firm masculinity to it. And there's a lot of people out there that teach like that now, which is great. Do you know what I mean? And um, just like on the other end of the scale, being sort of more feminine about it, or talking, on certain ways that you might perceive how a good class should be or a good session should be, whether it's flow or certain complexities or things like that. Going down more of a feminine style of it will take you one way, and going down sort of a more masculine style of it will take you another way. And I think they both have very good outcomes for different people's needs.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, I think you touched a lot on too, like you need to individualize your teaching for the person that's in front of you. So, whether or not they're male or female, or they're an athlete, or they're just someone that's come in with lower back pain, your firmness to touch, your sort of familiarity with them, how you break down an exercise is going to be individual depending on how that person learns and responds too.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. I think diversity. We talk about, you know, over the years we've talking about diversity in Pilates, and that if you have a body, you have a Pilates body. It's like the old Bill Bauman, the founder of Nike's quote: "If you have a body, you're an athlete," so to speak. Um, and we've gone down that route of there's a lot of us that vocate, that really are quite vocal. It's like, well, there's diversity in Pilates, and I think that's also in our teaching. I think there's a spot for diversity in teaching, because if you're trying to appeal to a diverse market and be it for everyone, you can't just have one style of teaching. You can't just have one approach. You can't just be using one set of vocabulary. You can't be, always on one end of the scale, because that only works for a small part of the diverse scale of what we're trying to appeal to. So you do need a lot of the other parts to it. Yeah.
Mm. But I think that is a testament to a good instructor too, because you need to be able to read your client, communicate with your client, pick up on those cues. And as we're sort of saying, everybody is really different and learns differently too. So if you aren't adaptable to your teaching style, then, it's probably not going to work very well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you do need to be adaptable. And I think you also need to be honest with yourself. If you can't adapt enough to that client, is there someone who's going to be a better fit for them? And can you help them on that journey to find that person? Whether it's in your own workplace or somewhere else. I think, yeah, adaptability is important, and also owning when you can't adapt to that point.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, I always say that to my clients. And then also, if you are, teaching them and there is something that's coming up that's outside of your skill set, then being able to refer them off to somebody that may be able to address that. It might be an injury or something unrelated to Pilates that, they can actually get help with that's outside of your expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and at National Pilates Training, we talk about that with all our tutorials with our students. It's like, yes, you have guidelines for different conditions, different situations, and all that, but there's always the overriding guideline of, if it's out of your scope of practice, refer it on. Mm.
Yeah. And I think if you're a client kind of listening into this episode too, it's having that open communication with your instructor, feeling comfortable enough to have these conversations and say, look, this is popping up. Do you know someone that can help me with this? It may be related back. You've just realized in class, oh, this is happening and I'm not sure what to do. And I think that's where if you can have those really good relationships with your clients that are really open, then that sort of pathway to being able to refer them on even for other things, can be a little bit easier as well.
Absolutely, because I'm gonna try and reverse the roles of interviewer and interviewee here, Kate. I'm gonna ask you a question. Why do you teach what you do? Why do you go every morning into your studio and open the doors and let people in and teach them? What's the
Well,
outcome?
I had this question. I was I was guesting on someone's podcast yesterday, and that's the exact same question that they asked me. And really, at the end of the day, is I like helping people. Like I like that, from a selfish point of view, I like that feeling of supporting someone and helping them, and seeing that client. Maybe they come in and they've got an injury and they can't move very well, and then in a few sessions, they're like their quality of life is improved and they're happier. So I guess from that sense, it's really seeing people change and supporting them. And
Yeah,
that
so
gives me so much joy.
Exactly. So supporting people and helping them through change and finding the pathway of them to actually get the progression that they need. And, sometimes that doesn't mean that we have to teach them for 5 years. Some things are like, well, we might take them to a certain point and then they move on. Or, they might not actually be ready for us. They might need to go somewhere else. Or, maybe they're beyond us and beyond our capability and we need to go somewhere else with them. So I think that's the point. I think the general essence of what we do is to help people. And sometimes helping people is actually not us helping people.
Mm.
It's being able to have this community and network of all different modalities, even all different skill sets in our industry as well, and in the Pilates industry, and also networks into allied health and, um, I think I already said other health modalities and fitness modalities. They're all really important to have as an instructor because it's just another part of your skill set to know when is the right time to be helping someone. Are they the right fit for you? Not just we're the right fit for them, and being able to do that accordingly.
Mm. And I think that's a really good point to make that your client needs to be a good fit for you and you need to be a good fit for your client. So the relationship goes both ways. And I think sometimes when you have newer instructors or, instructors that are building a business and they're taking clients on because they need clients, sometimes we may embrace clients that really aren't the clients for us, but we learn very quickly that that's the case. And then it's managing that too. But I just think, if there are instructors listening into this podcast too, that, working out that the client is a good fit for you is just as important as the reverse way around as well.
Absolutely, and I'm pretty sure someone like Leslie Logan, who you interviewed recently, would have said something very similar, in her teachings. Hmm.
Yes. Now, I want to kind of just flip the switch a little bit and move on to some of the benefits of Pilates or the benefits that you think sort of are important because we know, a lot of people join Pilates, for aesthetics, they hear it's the latest craze. But what do you really want your clients to get out of your classes?
Um, what I want clients to get out of my classes is mainly autonomy and self-awareness in their own body. So understanding that they can have a relationship with their body of what it currently can do, what is the potential of what it could be, and actually really where their capacities lie of maybe potentially what is, that they can't currently do as well, and being able to work towards something or to steer away from something, but also to find out where they're at for that day. Where they're at for that day sits inside where they're going to be for the week, where they have been for the month, where they've been for the last year, and where they're going to be the next year. So for them to have that relationship with themselves is much more important than any exercise I'll ever give them. Because if they can understand that, doesn't matter what exercise we work on or what goal we work on, they are always in the driver's seat or being the pilot of the plane, so to speak, and working on that destination because I might only see them 60, 120, maybe at best 180 minutes of the week, and the rest is up to them.
Mm.
So, yeah.
I do love that because a lot of clients, like I always say to them, you come in and generally for most clients, it's probably once a week. It's about 60 minutes a week. So I often say to them, the changes, we can make little changes in here in 60 minutes a week, but it's the things that you're doing habitually, consistently outside of the class, whether that's, the way you sit, the way you walk, the way you're just standing to talk to someone, that's going to add up over time and really make the difference. So that kind of consistency and awareness just in your posture, your gait, and those types of things can have huge flow-on effects.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, awareness is, getting probably about 80% of the work done. If you're able to be aware and be able to sort of work with your body in a way to understand it and understand what you're trying to say to it and what it's trying to say to you back.
Mm.
Um, I think Pilates is a great tool for that. It's a tool for us to do the other things in life we enjoy. Um, if you ask me why I did Pilates, it was to have a better life when I first started. Why do I do Pilates now? It's to try and feel like I'm 20 all the time. As a, do you know what I mean? I just like doing things that make me feel young. And Pilates makes me feel young, but it also lets me do the things that I want to do that make me feel young too. So yeah, I do feel like if I was to put it into a phrase, I feel like we help people to be human better, so to speak, to move and relate to themselves in more humane ways.
Mm. And when it comes to your own Pilates practice, how does that look on a week to week basis? Is it, similar each week? Does it change? Do you vary up the dynamics or the general routine?
Yeah, I vary it up a lot. So I tend to have a base. Do you know what I mean? So I tend to have a base of things that I will like to do. Um, I with my week, I am a very structured person. So um, I will make sure that I get my own session in my body in the studio at least once a week. Okay. And if I'm not planning for a masterclass or a workshop, that self practice will always be around where my goals of my body are going, um, as such. And then what I will do is that I will spend 15 minutes to half an hour at least every day as well, just working on the non negotiables for my body, whether it be hip mobility or spinal control and things like that. Then I will go do a reformer class. And the reason why I do that is because it's so different to what I teach. And, I will go do it because I like to be able to see the other end of the scale. Like I teach comprehensive, private, or small group Pilates sessions. They're all tailored. So, yes, we're here, we make them people move and we give people workouts, but we also tailor it to the nth degree for that human. So sometimes I feel like I lose the essence of, you know, how do you program back for the masses? And how do you get that sort of work? And there's things in there that I get in those classes that are real good learning points for me as well. And I like to be able to just be in the room with tons of other people. And, some instructors know that I'm an instructor, some instructors don't. Um, and you sort of just fall into the wayside of the masses, so to speak, which is sometimes quite nice, just to move. Mm.
Yeah. Especially as I think as an instructor too, you just kind of blend in with everybody else.
Yeah,
And, it doesn't matter what type of Pilates class you do, you always walk away with something, whether or not it's, just a great workout or a new cue or an exercise you haven't done for a while. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's really good. Or a slight variation of that, or even if it wasn't a very enjoyable class, you still learn what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. So there's always a benefit from doing a class.
absolutely. And I think that's the thing, right? Is I and let me caveat, I enjoy most of the before. I mix it up. I go to a lot of different studios because I like to see a lot of different things. Um, and also because I spend so much time educating the industry these days, I have more and more people that just teach reformer or group classes coming to see me. And so I need to understand where their levels of understanding are, what their techniques are, and things like that. So I go to a lot of different ones, and majority of them are really enjoyable. But that's like going to a studio session. Like majority of them are really enjoyable too. There are things that you don't enjoy, regardless on what part of the method you're practicing. Um, you know, and that's okay. And it gets you to understand what you don't enjoy. Don't yuck someone's yum, so to
Mhm.
speak. Mm. And I think it's great. And it's great because you tend to, if you go into it with an open mind, you can come out of it with not just the point that you realize you didn't like it, but it's like if you go into an open mind and dive into it deep enough, you can find out why people like it. Just because you don't doesn't mean it's wrong. Hmm.
And I think that's a good point for where the industry is. at the minute with all the different offerings, whether or not it's, you are going to a studio, you are just doing reformer, maybe you're doing classical Pilates. There is different types because people like different things. And I think that has really enriched Pilates in a sense. I know there's other people that think it's done the complete opposite, but as you said, there's something that we can learn from every style of teaching, and whether or not it suits you or not, and you decide to continue with that, or you go, yep, I've dabbled in classical. I've really enjoyed doing classical with some different instructors. I've done it with others, and it was almost enough to put me off. So, but again, I've learnt from all those experiences, and I think experimenting is great as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think when you get down to the tin tacks like that, as humans, we like to label things. Everything. If you look around your room right now, you know, you will have a label for everything. Yeah, and I'm not talking about just a sticky note with what it says on there or anything like that. I'm talking about, you know, you'll have labeling for certain brands, certain devices, certain things that you have in your possession, certain things that you do. And in the end, I think if you're following the principles that that we see the Pilates method as, in the end, the label should fall away. And it's that you're just practicing Pilates, regardless on what it's on, regardless on who it's with, regardless on where they've been trained, regardless on where you've been trained. And I think that's the thing. If you go back, Kate, and talk 15 years ago, what were we saying as an industry? No one knows about us. No one knows what we do.
Yeah.
Why can't people know what we do? Right. And now it is the fastest growing fitness and wellness modality in the world.
It's pretty cool,
And
really.
it's amazing. And now we're like, oh, but there's all these other, parts of it and labels. And it's like, yeah, but look beyond that. Look beyond that and see it for what it is, especially for the ones of us who have been around for a while now. We're a part of that. We've helped grow that. We've helped nurture that. And I think it's only now is still our responsibility to continue to nurture that, and even for the up and coming instructors and the ones that, have only been in the industry for a few years and all them, it's also now your responsibility to help us carry that torch and for us to keep this industry on the uprise.
Yeah, let's hope it stays that way. Really. Now, I want to touch on consistency when it comes to people's workouts. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be Pilates, but, we see more improvements. We see those improvements quicker when we can create that consistency. But so many people, probably including both of us, are time poor. And one of the big things I hear from people is they really struggle to fit in classes. So, what advice do you have for people when they're trying to look at creating consistency in their workouts or their Pilates routines?
Do you know what the irony about this is? I have literally just finished writing an article on constancy. So, if I can turn the conversation a little bit with you, consistency is great. Okay. We talk about it all the time. You've got to get in there. You've got to be in doing your workouts 3 times a week. You've got to always be there doing your work. That is consistency, right? Or, you're consistently doing your workouts 3 times a week, or you're consistently doing your workout once a week. And that is great until consistency stops, which is when you have a break. I think what we need to think about is constancy. And constancy is that you're there for the long haul. So you might get your 1 hour session in a week, but then you might be picking up a roll down here while waiting for your morning coffee. Or you might be doing some back extension and shoulder extension after a long day of work and teaching, which is going to take you 3 minutes. I think it's being able to actually just add mindful movement back into your day, breath work before you go to bed, maybe. Back into your day. So it's actually you're practicing the method as a lifestyle, like it is what yoga was originally as. Yoga is actually a lifestyle. we've just packaged the movement part of it and called it yoga and put it out to the world. But the practice of yoga is actually a lifestyle. There's more to it than the movements. And so looking at Pilates in the same way that we can constantly be involved in our work. That so when, say, you have a busy week and you don't get to your session, you're still getting your movement in because you're constant in it. Being able to think about your body in a way that, yes, you might have a 10, 15-minute routine every day to stay constant. But then also, are you waiting for the train and doing some neck rolls or, doing ankle rolls or working on your toe work on the train? All those sorts of things. They're really doable things. So I think constancy trumps consistency in that way. Because if you can make it a part of your life, it's like brushing teeth. Just happens.
Mm. Well, I think it comes back to what we were talking about before too, with one, building that body awareness, that being sort of the aim from your practice, if you can build that body awareness. And then two, that adaptability as well, so that we can adapt what we've learnt in the studio to apply it to our everyday lives and incorporate it as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a client at the moment who's not diagnosed with MS, but has had a spinal lesion. Um, and she's just started balancing on one foot to brush her teeth. Just added in. Very, very busy person, and just going, well, you know what? I'm just going to do things when I can, and just add it in where I can and when I can, and it becomes a part of a daily routine. And I think you're right. You don't get that until you start to have a relationship with your body. And if you don't have that relationship with your body, there's no intention. There's no intention with anything you do with movement. And if there's no intention when you do anything with movement, how clear can the goal or the outcome really be? It's like cooking. You have a method, you have a recipe, you put it together, you come out with the end result. Yet if you're a little bit sort of muddy with that end result doesn't come out the same every time. That end result might not even work. And so to have some intention there with your understanding your body and working with your body, and then also what you apply to it from learning from that, really gives you the outcome that you're looking for.
Mm. Well, I guess it is called the Pilates method, for a reason. It is a system, that you can work through. But I love your analogy with the cooking, because I love cooking and I cook a lot. And I always say to my husband, if you follow the recipe, it works. But the amount of people that say to me that they don't follow recipes and then it doesn't work, and I'm like, well, that's because you're not following the recipe. But cooking is a method; it's a science. So if you follow the steps, it's like you can't go wrong.
So you can only do two things with it, right? You follow the recipe and it works, okay, or you understand the science behind it enough, or the methodology behind it enough that you can make up your own recipe.
Exactly. That's the creativity that comes in. But I think you've got to understand the science first before you just play around with throwing different things
Know the
in.
basics. Know the basics. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I want to just do a quick little sort of fast five questions. My first question is, what's your favorite Pilates exercise?
Wonder chest side reach.
Oh, that's
Couldn't go
different.
past it. Oh man, I love it. It's so good. Like I am a very tight bod. It doesn't matter. I've improved over the years, but is in like wonder chest side reach just hits all my bits. It's so good. Um, and you will catch me demonstrating it to every single human being, even if they've been doing it with me for 15 years.
Because it feels so good.
Yeah, they're just like, you don't need a demo. And I'm like, yes, I do. I need to demo it.
What's your least favorite exercise?
So this is a hard one. I don't have one. I actually respect the merit of every exercise, not because it's an exercise, but because it actually puts movement back into the body. And I don't think any movement is bad movement. There's just movement that we might not be ready for or have the capacity for. Um, I have hard exercises, so things like hip opener or horseback, or even crossing my legs on the ground, in all honesty.
I
But
like hip
yeah,
opener
though,
is one of my favorites.
yeah. So that's the thing, right? I think we did a session the other week, and you're like, oh, single arm pike, side pike. I'm like, yeah, like I love that. Like it's
Yeah, but that's where I think too, when the exercise, maybe you don't like it, it's probably because it's hard, and generally we probably really need to do it too.
yeah. I think so. Yeah, and you know, hard things. The hard thing about hard things is that they're hard. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. But it's true, like as in, and you know, we need to be challenged. To progress, you need to challenge. So that's why I don't have an exercise that I don't like. I just have exercises that I find hard. And I think that's the way to look at it.
Mm. I still have ones I don't particularly I don't particularly like them. I'll still do them, but I don't particularly like them. What's your favorite warm up or prep exercise?
Ah, my favorite warm up or prep exercise. Look, I think my favorite warm up or prep exercise is literally just segmental articulation of the spine, laying down and like just starting to just see what vertebrae I can move, what vertebrae I can't. Instead of going, well, can I flex my lumbar? It's actually, well, no, can I actually control full segmental flexion of the lumbar? Can I actually work through the thoracic? Getting up on all fours, doing it in a cat stretch version of segmental articulation. I think that is where I really start to hone myself back in, so to speak, and start to leave everything else behind and start to actually work into my body. So yeah, you know, the good old segmental exercises. They could be pelvic curls, they could be cat stretches or cat cows or anything where I really have to hone in on that segmental work and really break it down. Mm.
Hmm. Favorite Pilates apparatus?
The Wonder Chair, which I don't think there was probably any doubt in it. So Wonder Chair, seriously, because I think it's exposing. I think it's a great it's a great apparatus. There's very little that you can sort of hide with the Wonder Chair because the base of support is so small for most of the work there. Um, and I think to get the most of it, you really need to actually understand the characteristics of the chair, of how the pedal swings, the different sort of gearings on those on the levels of how you put your springs up. All those things, all those bits and pieces. I think it's such a good piece of equipment, and you know, if anyone's looking to buy their first bit of Pilates equipment, I'd buy the chair over anything else.
Mm. Well, even just from like, cost wise, space wise,
Yeah.
those sort of practical points of view too, and then there's a plethora of exercises you can do on it. It kind
Mm.
of, it's something that I work with my clients. Pretty much every client works with a chair every lesson to some degree.
Absolutely. We've got a problem in our studio. We've got four chairs, and we're, constantly fighting over who gets the chair because we have 230 square meters. So we might have three instructors on the floor. Yeah. And everyone's going, you going to use this chair? You going to use that chair?
And then finally, what continues to surprise you about Pilates?
Ooh. The more you know, the more you understand that you don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a if you get it, you get it. Because I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
deeper
It's
you
sort of,
dive, the more you uncover. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Going back to the repertoire that you learn in your training, it's such a mind opener. I do it every year. Go back to all my repertoire that I learned in my diploma. Um, and even in the advanced diploma that I did, it's just going back to it and revisiting it and finding the new bits and pieces and the new understandings. And especially after teaching that repertoire for a whole year and then going back and really sort of trying to break it down again and look at it, there's always something new you find out about it. And it's whether it's what's new in the exercise or how different people need to be put in it to react and it's the same to try and get the same outcome, or using it for a different outcome, or there's so much to it, because you're working with so many variabilities in the body that really there is no clear answer to anything. And I think that's the thing. It's the whole Dunning-Kruger effect, isn't it? You go into something and know that you know nothing. You get a bit of information and think you've got all the answers to it. It's all black and white. And then the further through you go and the more you know, you realize that you're actually back at the start again and you know nothing.
Yeah. And I feel like Pilates is very much like that. Maybe part of that too is being in that kind of studio environment and seeing, different bodies come in with different, limitations, different goals, different expectations and things too. And then again, going back to that adaptability we're talking about before, being able to work with them individually really opens up your learning, because you need to be able to work with, what they need.
Yeah, absolutely. It's okay to admit that you don't know. I think the best part about that is that you then open yourself to the relationship of having the conversation of working it out with each other. And I think that's great. I think that's really where it becomes fun to teach. Coming in every day going, I've worked with clients for 13, 14 years, week in, week out, and we still come in and go, this is going to be fun, because who knows, we've got a program, but who knows where this will lead today.
That's
you
it.
know mm.
How's your body feeling today?
Oh, that question. I get my clients come in and ask me that now to me. Like, how's your body been? And I'm like, we're not here for me, buddy. Let's go for you.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
before we wrap up, is there anything that we haven't covered today that you feel like we should touch on?
No, I think we sort of got into a lot. There's probably one thing that I would like to state and probably ask everyone that's listening. I want to make a statement that all movement is good. Yeah. I think you just need to ask yourself a couple of things. And those things are, uh, is this movement what I need? Do I have the ability to do it? Do I need to plan or build to work towards it? Is my exercise with intention? Because exercise with intention will beat an exercise without every day of the week, hands down.
I think they're all really good questions. And, somebody that's wanting to run, go from 0 to 10K, that kind of springs to mind. Someone listening into that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. It's like, we're built to move. So I think that's where we should go with it. And, not all movement looks the same. Not all exercise that we've developed over the years looks the same. But not everybody's the same. And everyone has different needs. Everyone has different goals. And I think that's really important that we keep with that. I think we just always got to ask ourselves, why are we doing it? And does it actually sit in line with what we're trying to achieve?
Makes me think of my physio, because I had a Achilles injury a little while back, and he said to me, "Why do you run 5K?" And I said, "Because I get too exhausted if I try to run 10, and 3 doesn't feel like enough, so I settled on 5." And he's like, "Well, now that we've fixed your running technique, you can run 10." He goes, "Why don't you sign up for the half marathon?" I said, well, I'm still running 5. He's like, "Well, think about it and then think about a full marathon." And I'm like, "Well, just because I could do it doesn't mean that I necessarily want or need to do it." So I said,
Yeah.
I'll think about that and get back to you.
Is your physio a runner?
No, he's not actually. He's an ex-footballer. So,
Oh,
yeah, an ex-football coach. So I guess football's more in his blood than anything else. But he is, if you've got good movement, because he's like, you're a good runner. He's like, you've got a good technique. I can see that you pick, the sort of corrections up really quickly. So he's like, why not run that? Like,
mm,
if you can run 5, you can run 10, you can run 21, why not 42? Go for the full marathon. So
mm.
I think he was pretty much just trying to open my mind that I don't need to feel like I'm limited,
No.
because we put these limits on ourselves.
Mm.
So he's just saying it is possible if I want to do it,
Yeah.
that goal is achievable.
And that's you're looking at an athlete's mindset there, aren't you? So it's very interesting how people are hardwired. You sort of go, well, I want to do this because it makes me feel this way. This doesn't feel like it's enough. This doesn't make me feel good. You know, Whereas he goes, well, what's the possibility? How far can I expand this possibility? How far can I take it? That is very much an athlete mindset. I have a goal, and it's to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and people go, well, why do you want to do that? I've done Everest Base Camp before. Why do you want to go back and do that? And I'm like, well, you know, to say that I've scaled it, to hike it is great. But in all honesty, it's actually the condition that I am in when I did base camp was the fittest, the healthiest, the most clearest I've ever been in my head. And that's actually probably why I want to do it more than anything. Because if I put a goal to something like that, I tend to do it. Whereas if I go, I want to be the healthiest, the clearest, and all that, I'm like, yeah, but I want to do this at work, and I want to, go and present at 5 different events in the space of 5 weeks, and I want to, like it. I need that a goal to be able to create the result, so to speak. So yeah, it's just interesting how everyone's hardwired a bit differently to actually find out what they want to do and where their capacity is and how far they want to push that.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think that's as well, it's part of our job as an instructor, or, if you've got like me with a good physio, to open up your clients, eyes or mind to those possibilities, because they may not be thinking that that's even possible for them because they've already put those limitations on themselves. So I think, part of being a good instructor, again, is highlighting that to their clients, backing them, supporting them. And then on the flip side, if it really, if you've had someone that's had 2 knee replacements and they're in pain and they really want to run 42 Ks, can we look at a different goal, in the interim to see if that would, like you said, if really the goal is to just be the fittest in your life, can they get to that point by running
Mm.
5 or 10 Ks rather than
Mm.
having it to be a full marathon?
So what is their why? Because
Mm,
they might be using the goal is maybe not what their why is. Their goal is just what they perceive will get them to achieve their why if they're doing it. And so, it's being able to ask the question more than just how's your body?
yeah.
It's actually really starting to break it down a little bit, um, what do you want to achieve? Why do you want to achieve it? Why is it so important to you that you actually achieve, the 42 Ks after 2 knee recos? Like I haven't even had a knee reco, and I feel sick thinking about 42
Yeah,
Ks.
that's it.
So, and that's the thing. You've got to break it down further than that. Just because someone tells you their goal might be just how they perceive as how they're going to get their why done, so to speak. And so trying to find and understand that. And that's also how you can set more tangible goals in the short term as well. And also keep that person happy. Because if you're really tapping into why they want to do something, really you're feeding exactly what they want.
Mm. Now, I love getting, having people listening to this podcast and, enjoying it, but I also want them to be able to instigate things from that they hear in this podcast. So if you just have one piece of advice that you could give to our listeners that after listening to this podcast, they could go out and instigate straight away, in the next couple of days in their lives, what would it be?
Ask yourself how your body is, would be the first thing, I think. Start to have a relationship with it. If you are someone who already moves and is, getting, the work in and ticking all the boxes, for the health requirements of how much exercise you should be getting in a week and what you're doing, have you recently had a chat to your own self and gone, well, how is my body? How's it feeling today? How does it work? What does it really need? Does it need to be pushed today? Does it need to be backed off? Do I need something different? And I think if you can start to drive that into your own self practice, whatever you're doing, um, I think you'll be an absolute weapon for your own self, you know. Mm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, before we finish off, where can our listeners reach out, connect with you, find out more about you, and work with you if that's a possibility too?
Yeah, you can find me through a lot of different places. You can find me here at the studio at the Life Pilates, Melbourne CBD. We're smack bang in the middle in Little Bourke Street, sort of near the Hardware Lane district. How you can find us is at www.alignforlife.com.au. Also, if you're the social media type of person as well, you can find my social media page at BJ Rashleigh Pilates Movement, and also the Align for Life Instagram page as well. If you're looking for blogs or what places I'm presenting at for upcoming future events for continuing education, you can find either that on my social media page or benjaminrashley.com as well. So there's a few places to find depending on what you're looking for.
Amazing. Well, I'll link that all up in the show notes. So, listeners, you can head across to the show notes and all the links will be there too. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Ben. It's been a pleasure talking to you and picking your brain and just connecting with another fellow instructor in the industry who, sees and goes through similar things that I do too.
Absolutely, Kate. And it's an absolute pleasure. And, I really love what you're doing with the podcast. And, you know, being able to give free information to the world is something that should not be taken lightly. So congratulations to you and thank you for doing what you do as well.
Thanks.